Good morning. It's Sunday morning, May 13th, 2018, and I came across a Republican governor candidate debate last month, and I got the whole debate on tape, so on recording, so I'm going to do a content analysis on it. It'll be interesting. There's a lot of stuff they said, a lot of religious stuff. I think I could really dissect the conservative message in Georgia by using this debate. It's an hour and a half, a lot of information. They're being frank. They're speaking to their base, so they're being honest as to what they really believe, and it's great. So I'm going to just record this and put it on YouTube just to get it done, and then I'll be doing separate videos thereafter. Thanks.
Next up, businessman Eddie Hayes. Next up, former state senator Hunter Hill. Next up, Secretary of State Brian Kemp. Next up, brief delay. Businessman Clay Tippins. Next up, educator Mark Allen Urbach. And State Senator Michael Williams. So we're going to start each question, well, we're going to start the first question left to right. And first off will be Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle will start. The second question, Eddie Hayes will start. The third question, Hunter Hill will start. And we'll wrap it around like that. For the first intro, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle will give his first introduction. And for the final conclusion, State Senator Michael Williams will start the conclusion.
Great. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be with you tonight, and thanks so many for coming out to be a part of this forum. It has been a great joy to serve as your Lieutenant Governor, and I will tell you that Georgia is expected to grow by 4.5 million people in less than 15 years. And when you think about that growth, it excites me, the opportunity to plan and to shape what that growth is going to look like for the state. I've had the good fortune of serving with 2 governors, and I know how to make public policy, conservative public policy, as well as economic development deals throughout the state. To shape that growth across Georgia, we're going to need the type of infrastructure that will sustain that growth, both roads and bridges along with a bus and transit system as well, but also broadband. This year we were able to pass a robust broadband that puts us in a unique position. We are no longer bound by bricks and mortar. We can do business anywhere in the world from any corner of this state if we have access to that super highway. Along with that, making sure that we are building a world-class workforce that is second to none, giving kids the greatest opportunity that they can to succeed in life. That is what our passion, that's what my passion is. That's why I started the College and Career Academy Network across the state, where today we have 46 of those, where it's a partnership with the high school and our technical colleges, teaching kids on a technical path of learning where they can leave there with industry certification, a real value in their hand that they can take directly to the marketplace and be able to earn $30, $40, $50, $60,000 a year salaries right out of high school. Early college, dual enrollment, German apprenticeship programs, all of those things are critical for the future of our great state. This week, we actually had the good fortune of finishing up our legislative session, and in doing so, I will tell you that we passed the largest tax cut in Georgia's history. This has been a historic opportunity, fully funding QBE for the first time, and we're just getting started. 500,000 jobs is my commitment in the first 4 years.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hayes?
Yes, my name is Eddie Hayes. I'm new to this. Some people say it's my first rodeo. I agree with him. Today is Saturday for me, and today is the Sabbath, so I'd like to say Shabbat Shalom to all of you. And I'd also like to say Yahweh bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you and give you his peace. In Jesus' name, amen. My name is Eddie Hayes. I'm born to James and Martha Hayes over in Houston, Georgia, which is in the 9th District. And so we grew up with 38 acres of land and had a place to run and play. And so basically I'm telling you who I am because this is new to me. I looked on the website and they always said, who is this Eddie Hayes guy? And so I'm introducing myself tonight to you. I have a wonderful wife. Her name is Debbie. And it's interesting, I have 5 kids. My son Jacob is with me here tonight. And so we're here doing this because we believe that there's change needs to be made. And I think that the business skills that I have, I was a licensee with a little company y'all may not have heard of before. It's Zaxby's. We got started with them back in '79. We was number 17th store. And so, so we went 17 years, 18 years with them, and I wanted to talk to Zach, and I said, hey, I'd like to close on Saturday for the Sabbath, and he said, it's not our model. And I said, well, it is my model. I've been keeping Sabbath. And so I decided to get out of Zaxby's, which was a very good thing. It allowed my family and I to do lots of good things. Travel. We traveled to Israel for 3 months, 1 year. And so I had to make a decision. I had to make a tough decision. Do I want to continue to have my employees work on the Sabbath, or I don't want to give them the day off? And so I chose to sell a business that was $2.5 billion.
Senator Hill?
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate y'all coming out and spending your Easter weekend with us. I'm Hunter Hill. I'm a lifelong Georgian. I've been here my whole life. I got a chance to go to West Point to play football, and upon graduating, I chose to be an infantry officer and went down to Fort Benning and became an airborne ranger, and then led 5 different teams on 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been in the real estate business, and I've been running a coaching company for the last couple of years. We help entrepreneurs and executives reach their full potential. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Shannon, who's here in the audience somewhere. We have 2 beautiful children who go to our local public school. But I've also been in the state Senate for 5 years, and I can tell each and every one of you that there is so much more that we can be doing to move the conservative agenda forward in our state. But it's not going to happen unless we elect a true conservative leader to be our next governor. Because the values that you and I believe in, less government, less taxes, and more freedom, these things are not going to be implemented into policy if we elect a weak career politician. What is the point of having these incredible majorities in the State House and in the U.S. Congress if we're not going to use them to implement our values into our values and principles into policy? The reality is that we are $21 trillion in debt at the federal level. And I believe we need true conservative leadership at the state level to lead the way to begin changing that dynamic across this country. I think only states can do it. And I believe Georgia can be at the forefront of implementing a more limited and focused government that delivers results for taxpayers. And we're seeing all over the country that our Christian values, the founding principles of this country, are under attack from the left. And we need a conservative leader that's going to stand in the gap and make sure that the innocent life of the unborn is protected, that our Second Amendment rights are protected, that religious liberty is protected. That's what we have to do. That's what I will do as your governor. I look forward to your answering the questions.
Thank you, Senator. Secretary Kemp?
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, 9th District. Great to be with you guys. My wife, Marty, who's here with me today, we're from Athens. We're one of the few precincts in Clark County, maybe the only one that's actually in the 9th District, so we're strong supporters of Congressman Collins and appreciate the work that he's doing. But we have been in Athens. We both grew up there, went to the University of Georgia, started my own company back in the early 90s, so I've just been a good old hard-working conservative small business owner for over 30 years now, and that includes tonight. And I got frustrated with government years ago in the early 2000s. I ran against a liberal Democrat to help give us control of the state Senate because I was fed up with government. I was tired of too much regulation, taxes that were too high, congressional districts, as you all know, that have been fighting the fight at the party level for years that the Democrats were drawing that actually drew Athens in with Savannah. And I decided to do something about it. And I have a record of doing that in the legislature. After being back home, focusing on helping raise our 3 young daughters at the time, who are now all teenagers, I decided to run for Secretary of State. And I learned something when I was out of office. I was tired of politicians saying one thing and doing another when they got in office. So I made it my goal when I ran for Secretary of State to tell you all that I would fight to make sure we have secure, accessible, and fair elections, that I would fundamentally reform state government by cutting regulations and using technology to streamline operations. That is what conservatives have always talked about. Use less money doing that. And that is the record that I have. And you can trust me as your governor to implement our conservative 4-point plan to make Georgia #1 for small business, to fundamentally reform state government, move our whole state forward, and to put you first ahead of the special interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Tippins?
Good evening. In Genesis, Joseph was called before Pharaoh. He was asked to tell the future. And he said there'll be 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. I think that's a pretty good picture for our state. As Governor Deal has left us with unprecedented economic prosperity. But we face very serious long-term challenges. 2/3 of our third graders don't read at a third grade level. Metro Atlanta is the #1 place in America for sex trafficking. Those are hard problems. What you've already heard is Hunter talk about railing against career politicians. He's been seeking office for 10 years. I had all my hair the last time he wasn't seeking office. You'll hear at some point tonight Casey get very earnest and talk about serving, being in business. He spent over 20 years underneath that golden dome saying yes to special interest, bullying colleagues and citizens. I don't think that's what we need. We need something different to address those very serious long-term problems. I've got a very different background. I've never run for office before. I was a decorated Navy SEAL. I ran a large technology business. I believe that we have once-in-a-generation opportunities before us to take advantage of. 1/5 of our state employees are going to retire in the next 4 or 5 years. Baby boomers. We can steer into that and finally do what we conservatives are supposed to do. Transform our government, shrink our government, reprioritize our government. 1 out of 5 children in Georgia have got some amount of dyslexia, and 1 out of 50 schools support that. Our goal should be every child reads. If we use the skills and methods and techniques that I used overseas with my buddies at Dale Networks of ISIS, we can crush sex trafficking and crush MS-13 and the opium networks. That's why I jumped in, is to give you outcomes like that. Please give me this job.
Thank you, Mr. Tippins. Mr. Urbach?
Well, good evening, and thank you for being here. It's an honor to speak to fellow Georgians. And this is your campaign, the people. I am the only candidate that is a statesman. I am not a career politician, and I am not a fake lying conservative like them. For 9 months, Team Urbach has traveled all across our great state, talked to thousands of citizens, attended all gubernatorial forums, and much more. Thousands of people have told me, Mark, you earned my vote. And I replied back, God bless you, thank you. What can I do for your family? Isn't it interesting how for about the past 25 years, men like these have been running for political office? They say they are conservative, and they are with your money. Yes, they take it, and they conserve it, and they give it to their friends and special interests. As your governor, like our CIC, our commander-in-chief, and our duly elected president, Donald J. Trump, together, we will drain the swamp. As your governor, we will return control to the people, the schools of Georgia. Common Core is no more. We will make our government accountable to you, the people. We will double our agricultural production. Georgia beef is what's for dinner. And together, we, the people of Georgia, will remove this 40 years of ultraliberalism, secularism, socialism, and communism from our great state. For if we do this, we will preserve our unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And our children and God will be watching and smiling too. We are Georgians, and we are Georgia. Hip, hip, hooray. The NRA is here to stay in Georgia. My fellow Georgians, your choice for governor is clear. At Team Urbach, we have no fear. God bless you and your family.
Thank you, Mr. Urbach. Senator Williams?
All right, first of all, I would like to thank all of you for joining us this Saturday evening before Easter. It means a lot to me that you are gracing us with your presence and interested to hear what we have to say. Also, I am just like so many of you. I'm a father to 4 amazing children who are joining me today. We've got Am and Jared, Courtney, and little 9-month-old Brindley. I'm a husband to a beautiful, amazing wife, Virginia, who is the one that has allowed me to do the things I've been able to do here in public service. I'm a CPA, a certified public accountant, a small business owner. I used to own 18 retail establishments called Sport Clips Haircuts, had 160 employees. Then Obamacare came into play, and I didn't see how my small business could afford the weight of the regulation of Obamacare. So tired of government regulations, and also tired of candidates that line the stage, tell you everything they want you, everything that you want to hear. They spend tens of thousands of dollars in surveys trying to figure out the best way to present it to you. They get elected, they go down the Capitol, and they do something else. They tell you what one hand is doing, but they don't tell you what the left hand is doing. I ran against a long-time established Rhino Republican. I beat him 66 to 34%. I went down the Capitol and realized that we are not represented in our state government. It's the lobbyists, the special interests, and the wealthy elite that control our state. The same people that are financing their campaigns. If you don't believe me, go look at their disclosures. I am the only candidate in this race that is putting my own money into this race, relying upon small dollar, hardworking Georgians to take me across the finish line. I will actually be able to represent you. You might not always believe and agree with the things that I say, but what you will never doubt about me is where I stand and what I believe in. I don't flip-flop on issues. I don't misstate on issues. I tell you exactly how I feel, and I'll be very direct with you tonight in calling out what I believe and what these others claim they believe, but how their actions out in the Capitol have spoke otherwise. I was the first elected official to come out and support Donald Trump. I'll end on that.
Lieutenant Governor Cagle, the first question starts with you. Another eventful legislative session just ended early yesterday. We know about some of the biggest achievements: an income tax cut, the full funding of QBE formula, roadmap to expand transit, but plenty got left on the cutting room floor. What is your biggest regret about proposals that got left behind?
Well, as you know, it was a historic session, and oftentimes you do celebrate the many victories, as you just articulated, the largest tax cut in Georgia history, the first time that we've been able to reduce the rate from 6 to 5.75 and then to 5.5, with my plan going even lower than that. We will implement, along with balanced budgeting, program-based budgeting as well. Fully funding QBE, as you articulated, was very, very important because that is our future, our children. But the things that did get left on the table, in particular, was the hidden predator. One of those issues that, sadly enough, I would have liked to have seen move forward through the legislature. It did get caught up in the banner back and forth and was not able to get finished. But if I had one thing to say, that would be it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hayes?
I don't work at the Golden Dome. I work in Athens, Georgia, and around that area. So as far as what got left behind, I don't know. But I would like to say that I was sitting in a city council meeting, and they were talking about this rainy day fund that we have, and talking about the rainy day fund that we have in Georgia. Well, I listened to them, and they said, well, we have X amount of millions of dollars that's set aside for a rainy day. And I thought to myself, why does the government have that much money set aside? Why don't we live on a budget like everyone else? Why don't, when it's hard times, the government gets lean? Why does the government get to just keep going on and on, as they always did, day in and day out, and nothing changes? So I wasn't at the Golden Dome, didn't have anything to say with it, but I do want to bring that up to yourself. The money that's in a rainy day fund, it's not the government, it's fine. There's no money made there.
Thank you, sir. Senator Hill?
Yeah, I think we need transformational change. We need a different vision, and it's not something that's brand new. It is the vision that folks in this room have been fighting for 40 years. It's less government, less taxes, and more freedom. And so what didn't get done in the legislative session was the implementation of a more limited and focused government that delivers results for taxpayers. It's wonderful that the economy is growing in Georgia, but so have tax receipts. So how we're not working on meaningful, I call it, it's budget reform, where we reallocate the money to prioritize public safety and transportation and education and transform the way that we do business under the Gold Dome. I mean, the reality is that Medicaid has grown exponentially since it was created in the 1960s. Well, we as Republicans need to change the way that that is operated. And we have a chance. We have Donald Trump's in the White House. He would listen to innovative ideas from governors, but they haven't been brought up, and I want to bring innovative ideas to fix the way that we do government.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Secretary?
Well, thanks, Greg. First of all, I think we need to thank President Trump, Congressman Collins, and everybody else on the Republican side in D.C. that did the tax breaks, that created the windfall in Georgia that allowed the legislature this year to lower the rates and do the big tax bill, also free up money for other things like fully funding the QBE, which I fully support those, by the way. The disappointment for me was not getting something done to continue to rein in illegal immigration, but don't worry. I have a plan to track and immediately deport criminal illegal aliens that are literally wreaking havoc on our communities. The state of Georgia, while no one wants to talk about it, and it's sad to say, we have become a distribution hub for the Mexican drug cartel. And I have a plan that you can read on our website to create a criminal illegal database that will allow us to immediately track and deport those individuals and go after these gangs like MS-13.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tippins?
We're not doing enough to stop predators. The hidden predator bill was a miss. We're still not making a serious effort of sex trafficking. But I'd like to talk about a specific bill that was before the state Senate didn't pass, House Bill 743. It required a 20, 30-second video or whatever to be watched by high school coaches and student athletes so that they can diagnose and react to cardiac arrest. That bill passed 165-2 on the House side, and it died in the Senate. When the Lieutenant Governor's folks called the sponsor and said as an act of political retribution that bill be killed. That bill was literally about saving the lives of Georgia children. What passes 165-2? Yet it died in the state Senate. There was a chance to save lives. Between now and the next session, people will die because it wasn't passed. It's wrong. It's not the right model.
Lieutenant Governor, you have a minute to rebut.
Well, first of all, let me just say, I've not bullied anyone. And as I have challenged the state representative who came forward and insinuated that someone from my staff came and offered retribution towards him, is a false claim. Plain and simple. And if you have someone that can come forward and demonstrate that I have bullied them, please do. As it pertains to House Bill 743, I said publicly that I was in favor of the bill. There were things that got left on the table. Many of the senators who wanted it. I encouraged the author of the Senate to tack the bill on another one so we would have two bills in play. So to make an accusation that I am, one, a bully, two, that I am a career politician, is flat wrong. I've spent 32 years in business. My income is not derived solely on politics or public service. Public service is an honor and one that I give back, but being a bully is not one of them.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Urbach, to that question.
Well, thank you, Greg, and thank you for including me in all your articles the past 9 months. Team Urbach and I, we believe in you, the people, keeping the fruits of your labors, you keeping your hard-earned money. Most of my friends that I've made the past 5 years as I've been in the politics, the people business, have lost on average 45 to 65 cents on the dollar, and that is not acceptable. You should keep your money. I want to know why former Senator Hunter Hill, under his watch, the budget has gone from approximately $15 billion to $26 billion. This government, God willing, you will run for elected office and you'll see how corrupt the General Assembly is. We're talking billions of dollars. So the career politicians need to figure out why we're in the state we're in. And as your governor, we will lower your taxes so you can keep your hard-earned money. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And Senator, you have a chance to rebut if you want.
Yeah, there's been a couple of comments regarding my length of service. Look, I gave my oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, in 1996 in West Point. Over the course of my service to the country, I found that the real problems facing our country were coming from policymakers in Washington, many of them from the Republican Party. My definition of a career politician is somebody who campaigns like Ronald Reagan and then governs like Barack Obama. And so I would say that that applies here. Now, on the issue of the budget growing during my tenure of service in the state Senate, it did. When I showed up, I was appalled that it went from 17 billion to 25 billion over the course of my service. I tried to fight it in the Senate, and I realized that it was a futile effort. That is why I stand before you and am running for governor, because we're not going to get these policies implemented until we have a true conservative leader to be our next governor.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Williams, back to you on the biggest regret of this session.
Well, thank you. And this is a perfect example of how politicians can say one thing and do something else. Let me explain how we got the tax cut that we got, as well as the funding of QBE. First of all, the tax cut would never have come had it not been for Donald Trump passing historic tax cuts. Those historic tax cuts were supposed to come to us, but a portion of it came to us. Another portion is going to go to the state. By passing that tax cut, they're allowing more of it to come to us, but not all of it. The portion that they're still going to get that's supposed to go to us, they're going to use that money to fully fund QBE. In fact, the budget went up after this tax cut came into place. On top of that, there was a bill that Casey supported that took money from local education. It took money from local education. They used that money as well to fund QBE. So it's just hand tricks of how you fund QBE and the tax cut. Also, my biggest regret is that I had an amendment on a bill that would save unborn children at the presence of a heartbeat, and Casey and his cabal killed it.
Lieutenant Governor Cagle, if you want to rebut.
I don't want to spend all night just rebutting accusations that are not validated, but I will just make very clear. I very much appreciate what President Trump and Congress did on the tax cut, and we have seen tremendous benefit as a result in terms of citizens within our state and really our nation as well. Tremendous increase in salaries that have been given to individual employers and employees, and I think that's remarkable. We've seen an all-time high in terms of the stock market, so many benefits. But we had a decision to make. And early on, the governor made the decision that we should hold and wait to see, because this is projected money, not real money. And as a result of that, I weighed in along with the speaker, and we came to a consensus. This is a 100% tax cut with a billion dollar net benefit to the taxpayers of this state. That's a fact.
Thank you, sir. The next round starts with Mr. Hayes. This question is from Sally Forrest of Ellijay. How far do you think the state should go to provide tax incentives to companies wanting to relocate to Georgia, and how would you determine where to draw that line?
Well, I think the question probably is all about Amazon. And I think that the values that we have in Georgia, the Georgia values, if a company wants to come here and accept our values, accept our way of life, and then we should be able to work with them and be able to do incentives to do it. But if a company wants to come in here and wants us to become whatever values that they may be bringing into the state, I think it's bad for the whole state in general. I think it's not good for the persons there. You got a job, but then you have to sell out on your principles. And, I'm just not one that's willing to sell my principles to have a job.
Thank you, sir. Senator Hill?
The way you create economic development in a state is to create a fair, predictable, and stable environment for capital and investment to move into the state. And you do that by doing three things. Number one, businesses and capital are looking for three things. What's your tax and regulatory environment like? That's why I want to eliminate the Georgia state income tax. They're looking at your transportation network, because that's how you move goods and services to market. That's why I want to double our investment in transportation in our first term without raising taxes. And then finally, they're looking at, do you have a workforce that's prepared and able to take on the jobs of the future? That's why we need to continue to do what we've been doing on technical college, but we also have to elevate K-12, and I want to infuse the free market principle of competition into K-12 education so that families have more charge of their resources and therefore more choices and options. This is an economic principle. If we do those three things, we'll be on the short list not only for Amazon, but for every company in the country to move capital here and move jobs into our state.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Kemp?
Well, I think the thing that's important for you all to know about myself is I will be a governor that's going to ask that question: how much is it going to cost, who's going to pay for it, and what is the return on investment for you, the taxpayer, putting Georgians first ahead of the special interest. But that is exactly why part of my conservative 4-point plan is to fundamentally reform state government, how it spends taxes and operates. That is something that Republicans ran on in the majority and never implemented. So that in times like we're in now, where we have lots of revenue coming in, the budget is growing, we don't overspend and run government spending up, but we budget conservatively so we can have real tax reform and fully fund the things that we need to be doing in state government, like education, public safety, health care, transportation, and so on. And that's what I will do as your governor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tippins?
Tax incentives ought to have at least 3 criteria. They should be rare, they should have an ROI, and they should be applied on some even basis. In my business career, I've sat at the tables putting together deals like with the Amazon thing, and we can't possibly know whether that's a good deal without knowing how many of those jobs are committed versus hoped for. Now let's shift to the real issue. How can we have a better tax environment? People ought not to get to talk about lowering taxes unless they give you specific things to lower spending. One precedes the other. Here's things we can do. 1 in 5 state employees due to baby boomers voluntarily retire. Steer into that, take advantage of that. Number 2, use data and analytics to eliminate the massive waste, fraud, and abuse in our system. There's 20 counties in Georgia with 3 times the state average of their working age adults on disability. 17 are contiguous. That's not normal. Those are the types of things we need to be looking at. If we steer into those types of things and take the $500 million a year roughly that's been going into the rainy day fund and give that directly to tax relief, that's how we have a great tax environment and attract companies.
Mr. Urbach?
Well, as a former small businessman in Austin, Texas from 1991 to 1999, with common sense principles, my sports leagues, they tripled their revenue. And as your governor, I believe that the citizens are the first branch of government, which you are, and the citizens have a say in what their government does, because we represent you. Unfortunately, some career politicians and some fake conservatives don't represent you. They represent special interests. So the people should have a say in what companies come to Georgia. But I was a former small businessman. We know that small businesses are the life cycle and engine cycle economically for towns, cities, and states. And we will decide what incentives we provide to these humongous corporations like Amazon. And I'm telling you right now, I'm against giving Jeff Bezos upwards of $11 billion for him to move here. I'm fighting for you and your families. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Senator Williams?
I have been leading the charge against giving tax breaks to Amazon. First of all, I don't think it's right for the government to pick winners and losers. Secondly, I don't feel like it's right to take our money and give it to a guy who wants to give it back to illegal immigrants. I don't think that's right. Also, whenever I hear Casey talk about creating 700,000 jobs, well, how then has the earnings per capita in this state, it's gone from number 26 in the nation all the way down to 41st in the past 10 years. I don't know what kind of jobs have been created where they're not high-paying jobs. Also, Hunter Hill talks about being a true conservative. I'd like to know how he can vote for HB 434, which allowed the government to come in and take your property through eminent domain for economic development purposes. So if the state of Georgia wants to allow Jeff Bezos to come build on your property, they can do it because Hunter Hill voted for it.
We have a chance for 2 rebuttals if you guys want. Lieutenant Governor Cagle, you first.
Okay. Well, first of all, Amazon was in town this week, and I'm excited about the opportunity. When you look at the Fortune 500 companies that we already have as a state, we rank 3rd in the nation, and that is a remarkable place that's creating tremendous synergy. But I will tell you, I welcome Amazon to come to Georgia. If they want to come here for our low tax environment, if they want to come here because of our cost of living that is low, they want to come here for our regulatory environment that is fair and just, our tort system that is not onerous, and our workforce that is second to none, that our university systems are turning out and our technical colleges are here, absolutely. I think that is wonderful. And every single tax credit that is on the books right now, whether it's a jobs tax credit or an investment tax credit, every single company gets to take the same advantage. You treat everyone fairly, and what their total comes up to is what they'll be entitled to. But it's not at the value, not sacrificing our values.
Thank you, sir. And Senator Hill, you have a chance to rebut as well if you want.
Yeah, obviously, we make a lot of votes. I don't know what particular issue that was, but I will tell you this. We have focused on a couple of things during my tenure of service in the Senate. We talked about and supported bills that lowered the income tax and that eliminated it. Okay, so that's consistent with what I'm campaigning on. For 3 years, I tried to push education savings accounts, which would empower families with the resources that they've had, that they should have, to have more choices and options in education. We've also fought for small businesses with the beer jobs bill that would allow breweries to have more opportunities to grow their businesses. We did multiple things in the Senate that are congruent with our campaign for governor. But what we found is that you can't make the large changes without being in a position of leadership. And that's why I'm running for governor, because we need true conservative leadership if we want to have a more limited and focused government that delivers results for taxpayers.
Thank you, sir. And Senator Hill, we'll start with you for this round of questions. The late Zell Miller was best known, perhaps, as the architect of the Hope Scholarship that helped me and more than 1 million other students go to college here in Georgia. What would you do to help secure the scholarship for future generations, and would you push to increase the awards it offers?
You know, again, we're talking about having a more limited and focused government that delivers results for taxpayers. On the issue of the HOPE in particular, my focus for the budgeting process is to focus on public safety, transportation, and education. You know, one of the things that the Lieutenant Governor pushed through was the biggest tax increase on Georgians in decades with House Bill 170. When I was voting for or pushing to allocate more money from the general fund into transportation without raising taxes. On the issue of HOPE in particular, that falls into the top categories. It's education. But I want to prioritize K-12 education, and specifically to make sure that HOPE is still an option for our kids going forward. We're going to have to cut low return activities in the budget. Things like social welfare that cause illegal immigration. We need to look at Medicaid reform, because Medicaid population is our most expensive population and our least healthy. There's tons of dollars in there. I want to prioritize higher education, though, and that's very important.
Thank you, sir. And Lieutenant Governor Cagle, you have a chance to respond if you want.
Again, it's going to be a long night with these responses. Well, first of all, I mean, politicians obviously talk, leaders lead. And the reality of much of the allegations that have been stated, where you campaign like Ronald Reagan and you govern like Barack Obama, is just not true. When you look at Georgia and you look at us balancing our budget, returning our the money back to the taxpayers, that is the truth. That is the reality. And for those that want to say, well, we're going to eliminate the state income tax, well, that's about $15 billion out of a $26 billion budget. So you're going to eliminate that, but yet you're going to increase funding for transportation. None of that makes sense. What I have done is something that is fiscally conservative. It makes sense, and we're able to deliver on conservative principles that are impacting people's lives in a positive way.
Secretary Kemp, back to the HOPE question for you.
I was going to say a joke and ask what was the question again, but anyway. Look, I'm a strong supporter of the Hope Scholarship. I think for people in the state of Georgia, it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened. I fought very hard when I was in the legislature in the early 2000s to protect that when we were in a budget downfall, actually working on a study committee over the summer to address some changes that shored it up. So I'm proud of that work and a strong supporter of that, because it is helping Georgia families, it's helping our state, educating our children, and certainly from a workforce development standpoint. And many people across the country, quite honestly, know that when you hear literally 3 former presidents talking about it at Zell Miller's funeral. But for people up here, it's still a huge issue, the Hope Scholarship is, like transportation and other big issues. And that's why you need a governor that is going to fundamentally reform the way state government spends taxes and operates.
Thank you, sir.
To keep these things in place.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tippins.
On Hope Scholarship, let me tell you about an unbelievably cool thing going on at Georgia State. They've got this program where they're finding kids that are falling below the grade point average, and they're getting them tutoring. They're getting them into a different career track over time, and they're getting them a bridge loan working with businesses and banks. What you get there is a child that would have fallen out, would have gone back home. They would have wasted that 12 to 18 months of their life when they could have been earning. They wasted our tax dollars that otherwise could have gone to a degree. And they're getting the degree, and we're getting a deal for our taxpayer dollars. That's an example of something we need to encourage. That's about applying really common sense business sort of skills and better operations to government. I've run a large business, and I think that that is my background. I think we will find more opportunities like that. That one program in particular is estimated to be worth $100 million a year for the Hope Scholarship. Those are the types of things I think we can find and increase.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Urbach?
Well, I'm the only candidate up here that was a former teacher. Gwinnett County Schools 2001-2012, and I greatly support and will defend the Hope Scholarship because it's very, very important for our children and future children and our students. This man next to me, Michael Williams, in a private meeting, he will acknowledge that we had together a month before I announced my candidacy, a private meeting at Roswell Coffee House. I told him legally how he can become the next governor and put a statue in the first year of his term. This is the gigantic, largest legal case in the history of Georgia, which only one paper has covered. The Board of Regents and the General Assembly. Billions of your property tax dollars are being sucked up by career politicians and fake conservatives, and they have exclusive authority to do whatever they want with your money. And they do it. They pay the presidents at Georgia colleges higher than President Trump. So Michael can explain to you why he's done nothing while my attorney and I are fighting in the courts for you and your families using the grand jury. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Senator, you have a chance to rebut if you want.
Yes, we did meet, and I disagreed with him. Like many things he's going to say up here. So that's really all I have to say about that.
And to the question about Hope Scholarship.
All right. Being a CPA, I am uniquely qualified to address so many of the issues that this state has, especially when it comes to money and where we're going to get money from. Hope Scholarship. We have the second largest lottery in the entire country. We collect about $4 billion a year in lottery funds. By statute, by law, 35% of that is supposed to go to education. Currently, only about 23% is. That's $480 million that's not going to fund Hope. Also, I had two bills that would help to expand Hope as well. One was to put a freeze on tuition costs. We've seen exorbitant increases in tuition, as well as giving the state legislature oversight over the Board of Regents, because right now the Board of Regents is out of control spending our money. Also, the freeze on tuition, there was an opportunity to have a vote on that in the Senate the second to last day of session, but again, Casey and his cabal stopped it.
Thank you, sir. And Lieutenant Governor Cagle, you have a chance to rebut and answer.
Well, first of all, Zell Miller, I had the opportunity to serve with, and he is a remarkable man and did a huge service to the citizens of our state with the Hope Scholarship, both at the post-secondary level, but also pre-K, which oftentimes people miss. Since the Hope Scholarship, 70% of before the Hope Scholarship, 70% of our brightest and best were going out of state. Today, 70% of our brightest and best are staying in state. And that is a huge benefit for us as it relates to economic development. When we have companies coming in and we can articulate to them what this future workforce is going to look like. The REACH program that we've been committed to as well, making sure that those that are less fortunate also have an opportunity at the pathway, along with college and career academies and early college with dual enrollment. All of those options at the junior and senior level is making it far more affordable for individuals to attend post-secondary education.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hayes?
I'm up here and I'm shaking my head and thinking to myself, Jacob, let's go gamble. Okay, that's what this is. It's a lottery. I don't want to say anything bad about Zell Miller. He's passed. He's going to be judged for what he's done. But I will say, when you bring in a situation where you intentionally, the government is asking us to take our hard-earned money and take a chance on this lottery, I'm glad that students are benefiting from it. But I think we should, as Georgians, we should be able to do something else besides a lottery to benefit our students. It doesn't make sense to me, and the things that I read in Scripture and the Bible tells me that, I'm not supposed to be doing those types of things. It's just all out of whack to me that we can sit up here and talk about how great the hope is. I'm glad those people who are able to benefited from it, but to sit up here and talk about something of this magnitude and say, yes, let's keep doing more of it.
Thank you, sir. This next round starts with Secretary Kemp. In parts of Georgia, and certainly parts of this district, one of the biggest daily concerns is the lack of local internet service. Lawmakers approved a plan that lays the foundation for expansion this month, but it's just a start. What would you do to ensure more reliable internet access to rural Georgia?
Well, it's a huge issue, and is the only candidate in the race that's actually traveled to all 159 counties and worked with people in all 159 counties in my role as Secretary of State. I have seen that on the road when I've stayed in people's houses, rarely staying in a hotel room, staying with folks I've met along the way, seeing firsthand that their kids can't simply do their homework at night at their own house. And it's a big issue not only from an educational standpoint, it's a big issue from a healthcare standpoint, holding us back from doing telemedicine and new things in technology. That there's some really cool things going on, and we've been a part of that with nurses in some regard with the compact. And we've got this, getting high-speed internet in all parts of our state is a priority for myself. It will be as governor. We've got a whole plan to strengthen rural Georgia, which that is one part of it. I know I'm about out of time, but I would encourage you to look at that on our website.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tippins?
Rural broadband is unbelievably important. It's the secret to getting more telemedicine, a more flexible education system. The technology business I ran, about half of it was telecommunications and high tech. And my teams have literally worked with the very technologies that would undergird that. That would enable me to get rural broadband deployed at the very best deal for the taxpayer dollar and make sure it's not a corporate giveaway. That involves a private-public partnership. That involves focusing on unserved areas, not underserved areas. You got to be careful about focusing on underserved areas and let it being something that goes to a telephone company or cable company's pocket for something they're already planning on doing. There's tremendous technologies coming out like we've never seen before. Meraki gear, satellite. There's things that we haven't even seen in the past that will allow us to get high-speed access to our rural communities at less money than we've ever seen before and not become a corporate giveaway, and that's what we need.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Urbach?
Well, it's a very important question. The past 9 months, I've been down to South Georgia 2 times speaking with businesses, students, and parents. Thousands and thousands of Georgia students go to school. They have the internet in school. They go to fast food restaurants using internet there, but they don't have any internet service in their homes. I'm going to say it one more time. Billions and billions of dollars the past 10 to 20 years have been sucked up by career politicians and given to the presidents and deans at Georgia colleges and universities, much more than President Trump. They're averaging $450,000. Student college tuition has increased 75% the past 10 years, and Michael just acknowledged that, and he's done nothing in the courts, and I'm fighting for you and your families. If we have a legitimate, clear, transparent government and a leader and a statesman in your governor's office, we will provide the billions of dollars back to the citizens of Georgia. Okay, but career politicians have allowed billions of dollars to go to illegal immigrants and refugees. The Georgians come first. Thank you.
Senator Williams, you have a chance, just like last round, to rebut and to answer.
What am I rebutting to?
He said you didn't follow the whatever. You invoked his name. Sure, go ahead.
You want me to help Michael out? I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to.
First of all, let me apologize. The crying baby, that is my baby, so I apologize for that. So she just took her in the back, so thank you, Courtney, for doing that. Rural broadband. We all know that is essential to economic development. And we need to make sure that everywhere in Georgia, everybody in Georgia, every business in Georgia has access to rural broadband in general, so that we can continue to grow the economy here in the state. There is a bill in the Senate this session that I'm sure Casey's going to talk about, he's going to brag about. It helped to allow the expansion of rural broadband by taking away local control. I believe that we need to incentivize businesses. We need to work with businesses, not sacrifice our conservative values because it sounds good to say that I support rural broadband. You have to be able to take these ideas, find conservative ways to solve them, not sacrifice our conservative principles.
Lieutenant Governor Cagle?
Well, first of all, again, we're at the same spot that we started out with, those political talkers versus those that lead. And I have led on the issue of rural broadband with Senate Bill 402, which is going to become law upon the governor's signature. And this is a very well thought out plan, which is first you start with an assessment. Where are the needs within our state? And then you begin to deploy in a public-private effort by attaching it to the Georgia Technology Authority and giving them the ability to go in and really deploy and incentivize local communities along with local businesses to come in and build that coax, which is so critical for our state, the fiber. But let me just say this. To do that, the reason that is so important, in Georgia today, 70%.
Thank you, sir. You just ran out.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes. I think that having broadband everywhere is great, and that's fine. But I would like to say, what are the protections we're putting in for our children? I was listening to a fellow just the other day, and he said from the time kids are 12 years old and under, they've been exposed to pornography and everything, and we're giving them that abilities by handing them laptops at the schools. They're connected to the internet. What are the safety nets? And I would, as governor, would make sure that the safety nets are there for our children to protect them from predators online, which goes back to the sex trafficking, people getting caught up in these relationship things over the internet. I think we need to, security, and internet security is something that's well needed, as well as having access to the band and all. Yeah, it makes business works faster. It works for me. I use the cloud in my business, but I don't allow my children on the internet without supervision.
Thank you, sir. Senator Hill?
Good job.
Rural broadband is extremely important. I think we're going to continue to see more health care be delivered over the internet, certainly more education, and of course access to jobs and opportunity. So it is an issue that if we want everybody in our state to have access to what's going on in the future, rural broadband is very important. But the last thing we need to be doing is putting forth a government-centric program or a government program either way. There's so much innovation and technology, and the reason I don't want a government program is technology in particular is graduating upon itself year over year exponentially. So if a government were to run it, then it would be obsolete in 5 years. So let's lean on Google and AT&T and Comcast to come to the table. And as governor, I will lead that effort to bring the right people to the table. One of the things that the government can do is to get out of the way and let the private sector innovate. Maybe we can look at tax credits for labor as they go and put the infrastructure in place, and also have right-of-way standards across the state as well.
Thank you, sir. This next question starts with Mr. Tippins. Governor Deal has spent part of his 2 terms on a criminal justice overhaul that diverts more nonviolent offenders away from prison sentences. Matthew Cavadan of Gainesville wants to know if you support additional criminal justice reforms that Georgia should make beyond what the governor has already undertaken.
Yeah, a few things on our criminal justice system. First of all, Governor Deal's program for criminal justice reform leads the nation. I would see to continue that. But let's talk about some of the next things that we need to do to have a safer Georgia and continue to deal with our criminal justice reform. First of all, 1/3 of folks that are in our prisons come out of the adoption and foster care process, and that is a broken process. Next, 2/3 of our 3rd graders don't read at a 3rd grade level. That's something that we need to tackle with everything we have, or else we will always have too many people in prison. I know I keep coming back to this, but there's absolutely no excuse for why we're the #1 place in America for sex trafficking. Your human trafficking networks directly overlap with your MS-13 gangs, with the heroin gangs that provide the product that entraps those children into sex trafficking in the first place. The techniques and methods that we've proven overseas for taking down targets and networks of bad guys can be applied to solve these problems, and that's what I'd seek to do as governor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Urbach?
Well, it's a very important question because criminal justice is very needed in this state, because as I work with the best attorneys, they tell me that people's due process rights are being violated. For example, they're thrown into jail for hours, days, and weeks without due process. But we first have to ask ourselves, why do people in Georgia and America commit crimes in the first place? We know it's a person's heart, mind, and soul that teaches them either to pick up a gun, commit a crime, or their heart, mind, and soul tells them to commit a crime. Okay? I have a 5-point Bible plan. I keep the Bible right here at all times. I'm the only candidate that brings the Bible to all gubernatorial events. You know, hear the Word of God, believe in the Word of God, repent for your sins. If you're a Christian like me, acknowledge and take Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and get baptized or rebaptized by a man or woman of Christ. As a statesman, my oath to God, 10 million Georgians and our future children, our posterity, and 2 constitutions will be upheld at all times. I'm a leader. Look at the men up here. Have they ever stood in the chamber?
Senator Williams?
And led? Thank you.
Absolutely. There is still more to be done here in the state when it comes to criminal justice reform. As a matter of fact, here in Georgia, it is a crime to be poor. What I mean by that is if you get a ticket running a stoplight speeding and you can't afford it, you go to court, you work out a payment system. But to work out that payment system, you are put on probation like a common criminal, where you have to pay additional fines to the probation officers. There is more work to be done. We have to provide relief for the hardworking Georgians out there that might get a ticket, but don't put them on probation. Also, what you just heard a few minutes ago was Casey Cagle rationalizing away his conservative values, or his perceived conservative values. You will never find me explaining away why I did something that's not conservative, because we have to have leaders that can lead on principle and not rationalization.
Thank you, sir. Lieutenant Governor, you have a chance to rebut and to answer the question.
I'm not even sure what he's referring to, so I'll just go to the question. It's been a great partnership that I have had with Governor Deal on criminal justice reform, and I will make sure that the council stays in place so we can continue this effort as we move forward. But let's be clear. The biggest issue that is confronting our state is an issue of poverty. 25% of our kids live in poverty. We have 40 counties that have 40+% poverty rates that exist. We have to give them a better alternative than the choice that they have in front of them. That's why education is the great equalizer. That's why I have created 46 college and career academies that give them the opportunity not just to graduate at 98% graduation rates, but also to double their income from $16,000 to $32,000. Giving them a value-added proposition is what motivates them to see their purpose and their meaning in life. And as governor, I am going to fight every single day to stand in the gap so we cut the poverty rate and we give more productivity out of individuals.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hayes?
Criminal justice in the system that we have here in the United States and in Georgia, the one who the crime is perpetrated against is never made right. The person goes to jail for their crime. The person who was the crime was preventing it, if they're alive afterwards, they pay the bill for that person to be kept in prison, incarcerated the whole time he's there. And then we don't even have the decency to give them notice when they're going to be let out. Because who knows what the reason that they acted that crime upon them. I think a more just justice system would be that a system that those who the crimes are perpetrated against, that they will be able to sue those who perpetrated those crimes against them, as well as the government looking out for the welfare of the widows and the orphans and those children that are being drawn into the sex trafficking, that they get restitution. We have no restitution in the system that we have now.
Thank you, sir. Senator Hill?
I keep talking about this, but we need a more limited and focused government that delivers results for taxpayers. The bottom line is, since the Great Society, we have spent trillions and trillions of dollars on low-return activities, and it starves the core competencies of government from the needed resources they need to deliver results. Those core competencies are public safety, transportation, and education. And of course, criminal justice falls under public safety. We need to make sure that there's enough resources in the budget to make sure that we have enough room to house our criminals that are keeping our families unsafe. But the folks that we're scared of need to be in jail, and the folks that we're mad at, we need to have meaningful economic development opportunities so they can come out from their prison sentence and begin to be productive members of society. But again, career politicians talk about even poverty. Poverty is not something the government is good at addressing. We should have learned that over the last 80 years. We've spent trillions of dollars on alleviating poverty. We need to elevate ministries and nonprofits to deal with the challenges in our communities, not the government.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Kemp.
I certainly congratulate and thank Governor Deal for his efforts. But the next step is really public safety reform. And I have got a plan to do just that. I mentioned it earlier, having a criminal alien database where we can actually go after, tear down the silos so that local, state, federal authorities can work together. They can track these crimes, track the individuals, and easily track and deport criminal illegals. But also a lot of this is tied to drugs, to gangs like MS-13. Every day or every week, you're reading a story about a gang member doing a drive-by shooting, a teacher that is committing murder that was teaching in a public school in Georgia is on Atlanta TV this week. This is a problem that we've got to focus on. I've got a plan to do that. Part of that is going to be supporting our prosecutors, our district attorneys, and our ADAs to make sure they have the resources and the technical expertise to prosecute as well.
Mr. Tippins?
I started off with the criminal justice reform question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on.
My bad.
I appreciate the extra
but I was
chance,
going to give
but
an extra
that's all
minute. Jeez.
Good job, Phil.
This question is adapted from Dottie Williams of Hartsville. What specific, and this first goes to Mr. Urban, what specific programs would you cut in order to reduce state income taxes or other taxes?
It's a very good question. What programs would I cut as your governor to reduce what? Finish that, Greg. You're talking so fast. So the echo
To reduce state income taxes or other taxes. What would you cut in order to reduce taxes?
Okay. Let me think for just a second. The first thing that I would cut is stopping politicians from raising your property taxes like they've done the past 20 years. The word is conservatism or conservative, and that's what we've been hearing from all of these career politicians, except for the new guy who I just met is a good man. As you can see, he's biblically based, okay? The other men up here are career politicians. The amount of billions of dollars that have been sucked up your property tax dollars to the government is out of control. I'm fighting it in the courts right now with the grand jury. That's the first thing that I would do is return the money back to the people of Georgia so you can keep the fruits of your labors. Thank you.
Sir. Senator Williams?
Yeah, the first department that I would cut is the Governor's Office of Student Achievement. That was a power grab by the Governor's Office to take power away from the the Georgia Department of Education. Also, again, being a CPA, thank you. Being a CPA, I am uniquely qualified to figure out where we can cut money from. We have a severe lack of oversight when it comes to spending our tax dollars. For example, the Department of Corrections, they spent $33 million. Audit comes in, can't find where they spent it. Department of Community Health transferred about $115 million to the Department of Community Services, but the Department of Community Services only recorded about $105 million. Where'd the $10 million go? There's about $1 billion every single year that we can save, our tax dollars that we can save, if we have a governor in the office that understands how to manage our money. Also, I love hearing Brian Kemp talk about his illegal alien database, because he cannot implement that unless he implements my program of the 287G deportation program.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Kemp, you have 1 minute to respond if you want.
I would just tell Senator Williams I appreciate him supporting my plan to implement a criminal alien database, and we're gonna. That gives me a few more minutes to talk about other things like working with the federal government. So, I wrote a letter to Donald Trump when he said he was going to pull his ICE agents out of California because of that outrageous mayor that was tipping off people to raids that were coming. And I told him we would be glad to have those ICE agents to work with us in Georgia. And as your governor, I'll promise you, I will work with people like Senator Williams, even though he won't be in the Senate. Perhaps he can help me implement my plan to do this criminal alien database and go after these people and make a real difference.
Thank you, sir. Senator Governor Cagle?
Well, first of all, the governor does present the budget to the legislature. And as governor, I will plan to do that. But the first thing that has to be done is a zero-based budget approach. That is where you get to all the cuts that are necessary to rein in government. Zero-based budgeting with program base going along with that. Focusing every agency on their core competencies of what they're there to do. No duplication, not getting in a situation to where you've got 5 different agencies that are all doing economic development. And sadly enough, we have too much of that that's going on. So that's number one. But number two is making sure that able-bodied workers have the skills necessary to go back to work and become productive citizens. A lot of people don't want to talk about poverty. But ladies and gentlemen, when we cut poverty in half, it would put $3 billion to the bottom line of the state of Georgia.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hayes?
State the question one more time for me, please, because I've listened to everything going down here.
That's a fair question. What specific programs would you cut in order to reduce state income taxes or other taxes?
I would do away with the income tax completely, and I would go to a consumption, a fair tax type, and have it that way, because right now you got a situation, the income tax, 40 to 48% of the people don't pay income tax in Georgia. So if everyone pays taxes in Georgia through a consumption tax, then everyone's taxes there should be cut in half or go down, and it'd be a more efficient way of doing it. I run a small business, and every month on the 20th or midnight at the 20th, I submit my sales and use tax. And we already have a system there for collecting the taxes. Why don't we utilize the system that we have and do away with the income tax, and any money that was going under the table that's being paid cash, well, they got to go to the store and buy some cigarettes to go drink. And so you will recapture the taxes that are not being paid out through people, not being honest with the government.
Great. Thank you, sir. Senator Hill?
The government spends billions of dollars on things that we're not even equipped to deliver results in. And these are the areas of life change. So when you talk about specifically what programs are you going to look at, we have to bring to bear the social programs. We've been talking about it for decades. We have to do long-term entitlement reform at the federal level, but I don't believe that they're going to have it. Again, the 10th Amendment says things that are not specifically articulated for the federal government to do, that the states should do. And I believe we need a true conservative leader at the state level to implement a more limited and focused government that delivers results for taxpayers. So you got to bring to bear welfare, food stamps, the higher education bureaucracy, Medicaid reform. And the reason that we do that is because we love people. And the bottom line is the government is not delivering results and helping these broken people. But I believe if we empower ministries and nonprofits to do more in our communities, we'll deliver results for those who most need it, and we'll have the resources to invest in the core competencies of government. And that's what I will do as governor.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Kemp?
Well, I think real quick, 4 things. Look at tax incentives, see if there's a good return on investment or not, hold them accountable. I think there's some that we potentially could get rid of. The second thing is cut red tape. Part of my plan to fundamentally reform state government, on day one, I will create a Putting Georgians First committee that will be made up of business people, not bureaucrats, to do just that, and charge the leaders of the executive branch and the Kemp administration to bring those ideas forward, much like President Trump has done. Streamline state government, using technology like we have in the Secretary of State's office to do things better, and it costs less money. And the last thing is we have to continue to budget conservatively, implement the spending cap. We have been zero-based line item budgeting in the Secretary of State's office since 2010. You can look at that on the website along with our expenses. That holds us accountable, which makes us more efficient. We need to do that through all of state government.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tippins?
Look, I would love 0% income tax. All of us would. I just don't know how those numbers work. I don't know how those numbers work without having double-digit sales tax on milk, bread, and eggs and things like that. We could get income tax below 4% if we could find $2.5, $3 billion. So let me take exactly what you asked for specifics. I'll take exactly where that comes from. First of all, the itemized deductions, President Trump's tax bill, all $1 billion a year, should go directly to you. That's $1 billion. We've been collecting and putting into the rainy day fund about $500 million a year. And by the time the next governor takes over, the rainy day fund will level off. That's $500 million. You've got 14,600 state employees who become retirement eligible, voluntarily retirement eligible, in the next 3 or 4 years. Let's not replace all of them. Let's consolidate some of them. Let's shift them into better areas. Let's use data and analytics to identify the massive pools of waste, fraud, and abuse exist within the Medicaid program, et cetera. That altogether is $2.5 or $3 billion, and then we could level off the growth of spending.
Thank you, sir.
That's how you get below 4%.
Thank you, sir. Senator Williams, you start off this round. Most candidates on this stage have pledged to sign a religious liberty measure that Governor Deal vetoed if elected. But I'd like to know another area where you disagree with the current governor and think the state can go in a different direction.
Well, I would prefer not to be honest with you. I would prefer to talk about religious freedom and how important it is that we stand up and we fight for our religious values. They are currently under attack. You are correct. The governor vetoed that bill. And you're going to hear Casey, you're going to hear Hunter talking about how they support religious freedoms. I had a religious freedom amendment on the floor of the Senate. Again, it was killed. A vote could not be brought forward because of what Casey and his cabal did. The current religious freedom bill that's in the Senate, Hunter Hill would not sign it. Why? Because the donors that he has don't want it because they come from the liberal Buckhead area. Not only do I support religious liberties, I also had a bill that protected teachers in school, the Coach Small bill. We see time and time again where these outside organizations are coming in trying to take away our rights through religious beliefs. We need a candidate that is not going to run from that issue.
Thank you, sir. Senator Hill, you have a minute to rebut if you want.
Michael Williams is right about one thing. I represented the most tight district in this state in the state Senate, and many of my constituents didn't want me to vote for religious liberty. But I did it anyway because I've fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I know what it's like to be in countries that don't protect your religious liberty. They won't protect any of your liberties. So I fought in Afghanistan, and I knew how important it is to stand up for religious liberty. I voted for the legislation 3 times in the state Senate, and I will be your greatest defender of your right to exercise your religion wherever you are. Again, one thing I agree with is liberals are attacking our country, and religious liberty is a foundational constitutional principle that has created prosperity in our country, and we need to stand in the gap and deliver on that very important issue. Thank you.
Sir? Senator Governor Cagle, is there an issue you think that you would go in a different direction than Governor Deal?
Well, I'm just going to take up the issue that is at hand because my name was
yes,
invoked.
You do get a minute to rebut.
But, you know, I get grandstanding because this is a political environment. It's disappointing for individuals to stand up and question someone's faith, someone who has a record on the issue of faith and fighting for faith-based organizations at every single term. And yeah, I take that personal because that's not the man that I am. And no one has to question or wonder where I'm going to be to ensure that our protections are there as it relates to our free exercise of religion. Look at my record on pro-life. Look at my record on every conservative issue. Don't take the words of those that want to politicize something. Look at my record. It speaks for itself.
And you also have a minute to answer the question about Governor Deal.
You know, Governor Deal has done a remarkable job, and it's been an honor for me to partner with him over this economic time of prosperity. When you look at the fact of coming out of this recession, where we had to cut almost $4 billion out of state spending, and we had to really focus our efforts, we did that. We strategically put in place cutting taxes on manufacturing. Today we have 30% more manufacturing in Georgia than we did then. We've seen our GDP grow almost to 30%. It's unprecedented what has happened. The #1 state to do business in 5 years in a row. We are the envy of the nation. It's the reason Amazon was here yesterday. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be a governor that's going to fight to ensure that it's not just 6 years in a row, but it's 9 more.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hayes, is there an area where you would differ from the governor?
I would think that in him vetoing this after it was basically written like the federal one. I do take issue with that. I think that I own a small business, and on Sundays, we do church bulletins, 10% off, right? Religious freedom. Also, if I have an atheist come in there, I say, hey, just write on the piece of paper, I don't believe, and I'll give you a 10% discount anyway. The values is the rights that we have for our freedoms are given to us from God. It's not given to us from man. And the fact that we had to go to the Supreme Court, or they had to go to defend these things, it doesn't look well on our country and our state. I think that the things that value life, we need to value life at every moment. We need to take that into consideration, and through the trafficking of our teens and all.
Thank you, sir. Senator Hill?
I think it's been clear that Governor Deal has managed our state well. You look at the financials and things of that sort. But one thing I would disagree with him on is on the revenue structure. He's been very clear that he doesn't want to lower the income tax. And I think it would be very prosperous for our state to do that. And so I've been wanting to eliminate the Georgia state income tax. I've been talking about it from the beginning. And the reason is because the income tax only taxes honest Georgians. But yet, what about the visitors and folks in the underground economy and illegal immigrants? We can have lower rates, and people talk about how you're going to be at 16%. They don't understand the math. The reality is you can do this and be at 10, 11%, including state and local governments. But we're going to have to do it over time. We're going to have to do it over time. We got a 7-year plan to eliminate the Georgia state income tax. We can get it done. It will be better for businesses and families.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Kemp?
Well, I've been a strong supporter of Governor Nathan Deal, helping organize the statewide bus tour on his re-elect, being on him being with him at every single stop at a time when the polls weren't looking good, even though we didn't believe that when these polls had Hillary Clinton and Jason Carter and Michelle Nunn winning over Senator Perdue and Governor Deal. So I don't really want to get into those type issues, but what I think is important for you all is what is the next governor going to do? And who do you trust to do that? I have been a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm a strong supporter of religious freedom. And I think you need to look at the records. I'm proud of the record I had in the legislature. I'm proud of the record I've had in the private sector for over 30 years, including today, still making payroll, still starting new businesses and grinding away every day, mainly because I had a rough time going through the Obama recession.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tippins?
Governor Dill's done a good job, but every leader has some things at the end that didn't get done. That's just the nature of leadership. So let me tell you about a story about something I think needs to be done that's not done yet. Some of my friends, guys I went through SEAL training with, guys that worked for the intelligence agencies, they retired. And they started basically a service where they work with police departments, attorney generals to identify, target, and take down sex trafficking networks. They did this in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They had a 100% conviction rate. That's what we could do here. And they interviewed someone that had been a heroin dealer. They asked him, why'd you diversify? You're doing well selling heroin, and then you start selling children. He said, well, it's a better business. I can sell a package of heroin one time. I can sell a child for sex 8 or 10 times every night. That we are the #1 place in America for that embarrasses me and infuriates me. I will work to solve that, and I know how to solve that because I've done those things overseas. I commit that
Thank
to
you,
you.
Sir. Mr. Urbach?
Well, freedom of religion from the federal government is why our founding mothers and our founding fathers gave us this God-given, inalienable freedom. And that's why they put it #1 in the Bill of Rights in the First Amendment. I'm a professional author. Okay, Brian's going to like this because he's helped selling my book, right, Brian? He said it twice. No, but I believe in you and believe. Do we need a third great awakening? Many, thousands of Georgians say, yes, we do. And this is the book that's been read by members of Congress. About 400 Americans say it's one of the best books they've ever read. I signed it for Justice of the United States Supreme Court Stephen Breyer. Any religious freedom bill in this state, I haven't read them, I'm not a politician, that does not strengthen the Just a second. Doesn't strengthen the United States Constitution, weakens our religious freedom of religion from the federal government. So I'm a master and an expert on freedom of religion from the federal government.
Thank you, sir. This next round of questions starts with Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. I didn't miss you, right? Go.
Oh, hold on, did Michael? Oh.
No, he started that one. Okay. I'm going to read a quote from Republican Senator Fran Miller yesterday about 1 a.m. in the morning, right after the session ended. He talked about the bipartisan undercurrent in Georgia. This is what he said. We're not Washington. We probably agree on about 80% of what we do down here. Whoever the nominee, the general election against Stacey Abrams or Stacey Evans will probably be a very divisive one. What would be the first steps you take if you win to work across party lines?
Well, first of all, I mean, look at my record. As Lieutenant Governor, I actually work the body in a very bipartisan way. I think oftentimes we look at Washington, D.C., and what we see is that people are looking in a very much a horizontal mindset versus a vertical mindset. We need to be pushing the ball forward, not fighting about going left and right. And the truth is, conservative principles win. And we have demonstrated that in all of my elections, and we will continue to demonstrate that. When you're elected, you are there to represent the people, to do what is in their best interest, to create a better way of life for them. And government doesn't have all the solutions. Clearly we don't. We believe in limited government, but I will tell you, by having a governor who understands which levers to move to help individuals, I think we have broad consensus with that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hayes?
Well, I would reach across the lines with anyone who wanted to make education better for our children. I would reach across the line with anyone who wanted to stop sex trafficking. I would reach across the line and find the things that I could agree with and that are values that are Georgia values, and I would try to work with those things. There are going to be things they're not going to be able to do. There's going to be, I think the two candidates on the Democratic side, both want to expand Medicaid, I'm sorry. And, I think that would be a terrible thing. It's something that just keeps exponentially growing and growing and growing. And, we have to take care of ourselves. We can't continually, this country is built on self-reliance. This state was built on self-reliance. And to continue, we're having to turn around and get people connected to the government, that they're on the government dole for health care, for food, and for all those things. It just continues the cycle that was started in '68.
Senator Hill?
We've been implementing New Deal and Great Society programs for almost a century. And one of the things that we need to do as business-minded people is to back up and say, what are the results we're trying to achieve with these government programs? And I believe that I can work with a Democrat and say, if the goal of welfare, food stamps, Medicaid is to alleviate or eradicate poverty, then it's not working, so we need to do something different. And what I learned this in Afghanistan on my third tour, when the government can continue to put billions of dollars behind activities that no matter how much more money you put behind that idea, it's not going to move you closer to getting the intended result. And I think that we can win the argument if we're very honest and say the starting point is we love people, we'd love to see them reach their full potential and experience life change. That's the starting point. Well, then we need to determine whether these programs are delivering results. So when I implement a more limited and focused government that delivers results for taxpayers, I think the Democrats should be on board with that, because the goal will be to elevate lives through a lack of government spending.
Secretary Kemp?
Well, I certainly understand the question, but please know this. As your nominee, I will work hard to win the general election, and as your governor, I'm going to implement what I have told you here tonight. That is more important to me than worrying about working across the aisle, because the issues that I'm talking about, forget Democrats and Republicans, they are issues that Georgians want to see us do. Making Georgia #1 for small business. Democrats aren't going to vote against that. Implementing a spending cap, they're not going to vote against that. Cutting government regulations where it makes sense and streamlining government, they're not going to vote against that. Going after criminal illegal aliens and gangs that are here that are shooting our children and getting them hooked on drugs. They're not going to vote against that. And if they do, we will be in the majority for a long time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tippins?
In addition to the sex trafficking, I'll talk about three things that I think there's wide agreement on both sides of the aisle on that got partially done. Tonight you've heard about a sexual predator bill. That passed in the State House 170-0 and died in the Senate. You've heard about a cardiac arrest bill that passed 165-2 in the State House and also died in Lieutenant Governor's Senate. What passes 170 and 165-2 and 0? That would get done immediately. Next, in our state, the legislature some 2 to 4 years ago made it legal to use and possess in a controlled way medical cannabis oil because there's children, Lori and I visited with them, that have 200 seizures a day and take a pile of pills that will fall out of an adult's hand. We've made it legal to use and possess that, but we stopped on the 11-yard line and did not make that accessible. It is absurd. Now we're passing laws to expand the conditions. It is absurd to make it usable, legal to possess, and not make it accessible. That's another thing that needs to be fixed immediately.
Mr. Urbach?
Well, I'm running the past 9 months, not for me. This has never been about me. It's for the people, the first branch of government out of the 5. The 4th branch is the grand jury, as I study the private writings of Justice Antonin Scalia. I love people. I love our children. I love our students. That's why I became a teacher and moved here 18 years ago. I can sit down at the table of brotherhood and break bread with any person that believes in the word why this republic and nation was created. It's the L word, liberty, freedom. I believe in freedom. I love people that believe in freedom because if they believe in freedom, we can sit down together and discuss anything. In the General Assembly, the past 9 months, they have an R and a D in front of their name, but some of them act like oligarchs. The lies, deception, manipulations, the likes I've never seen before. I love sitting down with everyone, whether it's an R or a D, because we can get it done for the people of Georgia. And as your governor, we will get it done for you, the people of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Senator Williams?
What we have too much of in this state, in this country, is talking heads. People that want to tell you how much they know and how they can fix your problems. I have prided myself in the ability to sit down and actually listen to all sides. I've gone to Black Caucus dinners on several events. I've gone to Galeo events, not because I believe in their ideas, but because I believe it's important to understand their point of view so that we can begin the process of communication and finding common ground. I will continue to do that as your next governor. And I'd like to tell Casey, I don't know your heart, Casey, I don't. But if what you want to call what I'm doing up here is grandstanding, by all means, that's your prerogative. What I am referring to is when he stands up at the front of the Senate and rules an amendment by William Ligon that would protect faith-based adoption agencies. As he stops that amendment from coming to the floor for a vote, that is based upon his actions. Those actions are not represented in what he is saying.
Thank you, sir. Lieutenant Governor, you have 1 minute to rebut if you want.
Well, being the president of the Senate, you are the presiding officer. And it's not always easy. You can't make everybody happy. You have to go by the rules. And the rules are pertaining to germaneness. The question was on germaneness. The bill was not germane to the topic, the underlying bill. It was attached to a bill that was not germane, which is not legal in the Senate process. That is what he is referring to. I was the one that was the champion through the Senate that he will have to admit to that pushed the religious liberties bill all the way to the finish line. That's what I've done. Not only that, my wife and I helped start a crisis pregnancy center. So don't tell me that I'm not going to stand up and fight for our religious liberties on a procedural move.
Thank you, sir. We're now at our final question, and this is going to be such a quick question that we won't even have to use the timer. This one is from Marcia Neaton of Suwanee. In one word, Mr. Hayes, you can start this one off. Why are you the best candidate?
One word. That was 2. My belief.
Mr. Hill?
Leadership.
Secretary Kemp?
Record.
Mr. Tippins?
One word, brevity.
Mr. Urbach?
Statesman.
Senator Williams?
Fearless.
And Lieutenant Governor Cagle.
Leader.
Now we're at our closings. This will start in reverse order. Senator Williams.
First of all, to kind of clear up some of the political talk, the bill that Casey was talking to had to do with foster care. You tell me how adoption agencies and foster care don't go hand in hand. It does. Also, we've had a chance the past hour or so to listen to several candidates, including myself. We've heard them talk about being conservative, being fiscally responsible. But when asked, what department would you get rid of? Not a single one of them had an answer to that. What they did, they went to their standard talking points that were given to them by their lobbyists that they got from polling you. So if you want a sock puppet, there you go. But if you want somebody that's going to stand up for what we believe in as conservatives, that's going to stand up to the media, going to stand up to the left, going to stand up to even our own party sometimes. You know what? There's several members of our own party, they don't like me. You know why they don't like me? It's because I tell you how it is, whether it serves the Republican Party or not, because it is time that we the people rise up and take our state and our country back, just like we did with Donald Trump. If we want to do that here in Georgia, there's only one candidate. That's me, because I am not bought and paid for by lobbyists, special interests, and the wealthy elite. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Urbach?
This is the final conclusion,
This is
right?
your conclusion.
Okay, thank you. Well, so thank you again for being here this evening. It's an honor and privilege to speak to fellow Georgians. Like you, our best hope for Georgia is that you believe in your future, but more importantly, you believe in your children's future and their children's future. And as your statesman governor in your mansion, my oath again, God, 10 million Georgians and our future children, our posterity, and 2 constitutions will be upheld at all times. That's why I'm fighting for you right now in the grand jury, that these candidates won't even touch, and newspapers won't even touch the billions of dollars. Why am I trying to become the next governor? As I've put my life, my fortune is gone, and my sacred honor will always be upheld the past 5 years. Because I love Georgians. We are the best citizens in the best state in the nation, bar none. And I believe in you, and I love you, and I have a dream, just like God's dream, and Dr. King's dream, and Coretta Scott King's dream, for all of our children, especially my 11-year-old daughter, and your children, and your grandchildren, to live in Georgia and America, not controlled by a wicked, Satan-created order that they're calling, and I know all about it. This spiritual darkness that's upon Georgia, the good versus the bad, I know all about it, okay? And God willing, you, the people of Georgia, will get right, everyone get right with God. Proverbs 3:5 and 3:6, and then Galatians 5:16, because this wickedness needs to stop, and the people of Georgia can make it happen. And I think some of you know what I'm talking about. These men are politicians. They will throw out the conservative word forever, but we know who's a statesman, and we know that God is great, and we will succeed here in Georgia. Because you, the people, are the first branch. And God bless you. May God bless the great state of Georgia. And may God bless the great republic of the United States of America. Thank you.
Sir. Mr. Tippins?
At the beginning earlier tonight, I learned something I didn't know, that a 10 or 20-year career in politics isn't a career. That was a new one for me. I've never looked at my ballot and thought to myself, we need more of that, 10, 20 years, and not calling that a career. I've never run for office. I've had a successful career in business, running a large technology business. I was a decorated Navy SEAL. That's a very, very different skill set. My family and I concluded that's the right skill set for Georgia right now. I don't think I'm the right person to be governor in every time and every age, but we face a set of challenges and opportunities that I am uniquely well suited for. I'd like this job because I think there's some things that need to happen and could happen if you stand by me and give me the opportunity. It won't happen otherwise. I'd like to annihilate sex trafficking, the heroin gangs, the MS-13 gangs. My background speaks to the ability to do that. I'd like to build some things. Maybe a bypass around Atlanta, accelerate the rate at which we're dredging the Savannah port. I'd like to change the culture in our Georgia political body. I'd like to clean up the culture of corruption, cronyism. I gave you numbers earlier. I'd like to drop the state budget by $3 billion and drop income taxes below 4%. And I'd like every child in Georgia to read. That's how we have less money going to prisons and less money going to entitlements and more people working in 10 or 15 years. That's my vision for what a 21st century Georgia looks like. That would be a great Georgia. That's the Georgia that I'd like to help lead us towards. Please give me the opportunity to do so.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Kemp.
Well, thank you all for, again, coming tonight. I am proud of the fact that I'm the only candidate in the race that has been a hardworking small business person for over 30 years, every single day that I've ever served in elected office, including today, has legislative experience and has run a large executive branch agency. But this race to me is about who do you trust? Who do you trust to actually implement the things that they say on this stage and as we travel across the state? And I have a record of doing that, fighting and winning for the things that I told you I would do when I ran for the legislature and when I ran for Secretary of State. I've been standing up to liberal groups that Stacey Abrams is a part of. I've been standing up to the Obama Justice Department to make sure we could implement a citizenship check and preserve our common sense photo ID law that I know you all support when we go to vote. But I pride myself as well on putting plans out there in detail that will move the needle when I'm the governor. Adoption reform, making Georgia #1 for small business, creating that criminal alien database, education, transportation, a plan to strengthen rural Georgia. We have to look forward. You know, we can talk about our record, but really, who do you trust as we look forward to actually do the things that they're going to do and to fight every day to do that? I have a record of doing that. That is my commitment to you, that I will continue to do that. And if you will support me and help make me your nominee, I promise I will not let a Democrat beat me in November. I will work day and night to win that race so we can continue to have conservative, small business-minded leadership in the great state of Georgia. KempForGovernor.com. I'd love to have your vote and support. I'd like to wish you all a happy Easter tomorrow. God bless.
Thank you, sir. Senator Hill.
Well, thank you for spending some time with us on this Easter weekend. You know, y'all have an important decision to make. You have to have a discerning idea of two things. It's two things. It's not one, it's two. Number one, who truly has a conservative governing philosophy? Because the values and principles that made our country great are under attack, and they're being eroded every day, and they're not being defended enough even by members in our own party. Okay, so who has a truly governing philosophy, not only for the conservative values that we believe in, but also the fiscal conservatism that we all believe in? And then number two, who has the leadership experience to turn those ideas and those philosophies into policy? We've been campaigning for 40 years on less government, less taxes, and more freedom. Let's see how it works when it's actually implemented into policy. You know, career politicians get rewarded through getting reelected regardless of whether they've delivered results. But everybody in this room has to deliver results, whether it be in your business or your family, because if you don't deliver results, you have to deal with that every day. And I come from the world of results. As a West Point graduate and Army Ranger and a leader in 3 combat tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, as running a small business, I know what it's like to deliver results in combat and business, and I've fought for our values and principles in the state Senate, and I'm the only candidate on this stage that has experience in all 3. So I would be very grateful for your support in this campaign, because I have faced the foreign enemies of our country, and I can tell each and every one of you that Islamic terrorism will never bring our country to its knees, because we are too strong and they are too weak. But what will bring our country to its knees are weak, career politicians who undermine the values and principles that made us the greatest country in the world, and I truly believe this is the fight of our time. We need to implement a more limited and focused government that delivers results for taxpayers, eliminate the income tax, elevate K-12 education with free market principles, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Hayes.
My name is Eddie Hayes. I don't have a stump speech. I've just, tell you the truth, I I made it under the line in 8 minutes. I was there on the day that the candidates was closing at 12 o'clock, and I got there at 11:30, and I'm just human like everybody else. I had my check made out to the wrong person. I had it made out to Brian Kemp, not really Brian Kemp, but the Secretary of the State. And it was supposed to be to the Georgia Republican Party. So I'm standing there and I'm going, what do I do? And Carmen happens to be there, works with John, and she said, here's a list of banks close by. And I was like, getting to a bank and getting back in a half hour. And it'd be a miracle. It'd be a miracle. So I look on there, I find my bank, SunTrust. I go to walking, it's 11 minutes away. So I pick up the pace. I get over there, I guess, in less than 11 minutes, because I know if I don't get back in time, this is just all for naught. And so I get there, and the teller, bless his soul, he was moving in slow motion. I'm going, why is this taking so long? I just need a cashier's check. I've got the money. And he says, here you go, Mr. Hayes, have a great day. I'm going, have a great day. I've got to get back to 11-man trips back to there. So I hurried back, and I made it back. I had 8 minutes. I was there at 8 minutes till. I was signed in to do this. And so why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Because I believe I have a belief in a belief systems of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I believe that Yeshua is my Messiah. And I believe that all the answers to all problems can be found in the Scripture. If we just turn and look, we have these things where we have tragic things, and they say when 9/11 happened, we can build it, we can make it better. The first thing we should have done was what like George Washington did: get on our knees and pray and ask for the providence of God to be on our country.
Thank you, sir.
God bless.
And finally, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle.
Well, again, thanks to everyone who has participated along with the various candidates tonight as well. You do have a decision to make, and it is a very big decision. You've heard a lot of conversation here tonight. I will tell you that to be governor, you have to have an understanding of the complex issues and diversity of our great state. One of the things that is popular today is to talk about being an outsider. I will tell you that Washington, D.C. is broke, and the only person who can fix it is President Trump. However, Georgia is not broke. When you look in every single category, we are exceeding in all measures. Do we have places to improve upon? Absolutely. But you have to elect someone who can be a CEO who understands how to make this state even better than it is today. If you have a heart problem, you're not going to go to a nurse. You're going to seek out the best physician that you can. My story is pretty simple. You're right here in Hall County where I was raised. My mom, who's here tonight, raised me by herself. Those early years were spent in a little single-wide trailer, and I remember vividly walking in and seeing her kneeling by her bed, saying her prayers, asking for God's provision for she and I. She worked 2 jobs. She was basically a bookkeeper. She taught me the value of faith. She taught me the value of hard work and perseverance. And I love her. I never thought that I would be the guy that would be where I am today. I didn't think I would own a small business by the time I was 20, build houses, open banks, and all those things, or be lieutenant governor, but I am. If I have the opportunity to be your governor, I promise you, I will fight every single day to make this state the very best place to live, work, and play. Thank you. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our candidates and our wonderful moderator a round of applause. The 9th District GOP would like to thank everybody for coming tonight. We hope the information that you've heard here is going to help you make an informed decision as you head to the polls. Quick reminders before you leave. This election is going to be decided on May the 22nd. Make sure that you get out and cast your vote. Voting begins April 30th, with our Saturday voting being on May 12th. Now, because in the 9th, we believe in being transparent and fair, contrary to what some have tweeted, we want to let you know this, that there was a small glitch from 7 to 7:10 with our online poll where it closed momentarily. It has reopened at 7:10, and for the next 10 minutes after this debate ends, we will leave the straw poll open for anybody who did not have the opportunity to vote in it. So our results will be slightly delayed to you, but we will have them to you this evening. We invite you to stay for our after party hosted by ESE Networks in the reception hall right outside. And again, on behalf of the 9th District Republican Party, we thank you for joining us this evening, and we wish each of you a very happy Easter.
Yes.